Hello, my sunshines. How are you, my dear grade 5 students? How's everything going? Now, do you know what's the latest news for this week? I will let you know. This is the last week for teaching, okay? But it doesn't mean that we will stop. This week will be the last lesson in math. But next week, we will do mixed review questions for most of the lessons that we covered during the e-learning weeks. So, you have to know that everyone is busy so far, teachers and students. So let's not waste the time and do whatever we can in this timing to achieve our best. And remember, no one can stop us from learning and achieving. Even a little virus like the coronavirus, the microscopic one, still we can defeat it by our strong wills and by believing that one day this thing will vanish. So believe in yourself, students, and I want to extend my big thanks to all of you for what you have achieved so far. I'm really proud of you, students. Keep up the hard work. May God bless you and peace be with you. So today's lesson in math, it's three-dimensional figures. This is chapter 11, lesson 4. And remember, this is week 7, May 4, 2020. The learning objective for this week is how to identify, describe, and classify three-dimensional figures. Have you ever heard of 3D figures? Like when you go to the movies, have you ever watched a 3D movie where you wear the glasses and you can see the shapes or you can see the scenes in real 3D shapes, like real figures? This is what we're gonna discuss in this lesson. Please get ready with your Go Math book, chapter 11, your math notebook, your pencil, sharpener, and eraser. Now let me ask you this question. What's a 2D shape? By the way, you studied these 2D shapes. You remember the previous lesson about polygons? A 2D shape is a shape that has two dimensions, length and width. What does this mean? We studied this polygon before. Do you remember what's the name of this polygon? Yes, it's a rectangle. And it has one side that's longer than the other. Did you see the longer side and the shorter side? Yes, this is the longer side. We call it length. And this is the shorter side and we call it width. This is a two-dimensional figure. And as I said, we studied this lesson in our first lesson in this chapter, which is polygons. We studied rectangles, triangles, hexagons, pentagons, octagons. Do you remember? These are all 2D shapes. Now, what is a 3D shape? I want you to look at this shape, and as you notice, it's different than a rectangle. It's similar to a rectangle in a way, but there is an additional part in that. Remember that a 3D shape, it's a solid shape that has three dimensions: length, width, and an additional dimension which is height. Let's see. This is one side, another side, and a third side. Can you tell which one is which one is length, which one is width, and which one is height? Let's see. You are correct. The yellow side is the length, and the blue side is the width, and the height is the red side. Good job, dear students. Now, before we start the lesson, I want to remind you of this word, which is a base. A base is usually the bottom face of a 3D object. So usually most of figures have bases. Okay, it's the bottom side of any 3D shape. Like look at this cube and look at this cone. Both of them have a base, and of course the base for a cube is different than the base for a cone. I will now discuss this figure with you. This is a three-dimensional figure. This is different than what we studied before in our previous lesson, which is polygons. Now, this shape is called a prism. I want you students to look very closely at two important sides of this prism. And I will focus on the bases. Do you see this side here? This is a base at the top side, and there's another base at the bottom side. So this shape has two bases, right? And we have something called a lateral face. So the prism has how many faces? 1, 2, this is a face, and there's the one at the back, which is 3 faces, right? And the faces are connected to 2 bases. This is one base, and this is another base. Now I want to remind you that this base is actually a triangle, right? This is the shape of this base. It's a triangle. And we studied before that a triangle is a polygon, right? So I can see that this prism has 2 polygons. The bases are polygons. Now my question is, are these polygons the same? Are the bases the same? Do you see them equal? Are they similar? Are they congruent? Yes, they are. So a prism has 2 congruent bases, 2 equal bases, 2 similar bases. That's why it's a prism. So if I want to define a prism, I say a prism has 2 congruent polygons as bases. Where are they? It's the upper side and it's the lower side. So the bases are congruent. This is a prism. Now how do I name this prism? It's not enough to say it's a prism. The easy thing about this lesson that I will name the prism according to the shape of its base. Now let's repeat it again. What do I see? What kind of shape is the base? We said that it's a triangle. So how do I name it? I will say it's a triangular prism. It's a triangular prism. How do I know this? According to the base shape, because the bases are triangles, so it's a triangular prism. Why is it a prism? Because it has 2 bases and the 2 bases are congruent. Now you can see this picture in your book, page 655. It's a summary about prism. So it's a shape that's used to name the solid figure. And as we said, the base shape is a triangle. So the prism is a triangular prism. Now, are you ready to start? Let's go together to page 655. Now, all these shapes are prisms. Now, don't be worried. Why are they prisms? Remember, a prism has 2 congruent polygons as bases. If you remember this rule, you will never go wrong. It has 2 congruent polygons as bases. Now let's take the first figure. Let's take the first 3-dimensional figure. Where is the base? Do you see this gray base on top and the gray base at the bottom? These are my 2 bases and they look exactly the same. They are congruent bases and the base actually is a polygon. Can you tell the shape of the base, students? Can you tell what shape is that? Take the shaded part, the gray part or the blue part, depending on the color of your book, okay? What kind of shape do you see in the base? We have to name the base shape. Excellent, it's a rectangle. We have 2 bases as rectangles. Now I will name this prism according to the shape of the base. Can you tell what is the shape of this prism? Perfect. It's a rectangular prism. It's very easy. Let's take the next shape now. I want you to focus very well on the upper base and the lower base, the shaded part. They are identical. They are congruent polygons. And we studied this polygon before. Focus very well on the shaded part and count the sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a 5-sided polygon. Do you remember what's the name of this base or what's the name of this polygon? Excellent, it's a pentagon. Now who can tell me what's the name of this prism according to the base shape? Good job. It's a pentagonal prism. Pentagonal prism. Well done. Let's now take the third shape. Can you say it by yourself? Can you say the base shape? Count the sides and you will know what kind of base shape, and you can name this 3D shape, which is a prism. Well done. The base shape, it's a hexagon. Now what's the name of the solid figure? Hexagonal prism. Now the last one, take few seconds, count the sides of the bases, and you can know the base shape and the prism name. Perfect, octagon. And the name of the solid figure is octagonal prism. So far, so good. Let me remind you, students, of something about this prism. The prisms have rectangular faces. We were talking about the bases the whole time, but now let me explain to you what do I mean by a face. Now forget about the bases for a while, forget about the shaded parts, and I want you to look at the first shape or the first 3D figure, and you can locate one of the faces. Can you see? This is a face, and this part is also a face, and the other side is a face, and the other side is a face. So what kind of faces do you see in this prism? Yes, they are rectangular faces. What about the second shape? Yes, that's a face, and it's rectangular. What about this one? Very good. Again, it's a rectangular face and another rectangular face. So prisms have rectangular faces. Very good. Now, how do I know if this shape is a prism? Now, most of you know that this is a 3D shape, but is this a prism? Yes, it is. How do I know? I have to say the rule. Look at the bases. They must be congruent polygons. Can you see the base on top and the base at the bottom? They are exactly the same. So yes, it's a prism. Now I will name it by the shape of its base. What kind of base do you see? It's a rectangle. So this is a rectangular prism. How was it so far? The lesson is very easy. Now I want you please to go to page 656 and I'll ask you this question. What about this shape? What about this 3D figure? Is it a prism? Now let's remember the rule. We said that a prism must have two bases, right? Look at the base in this picture, or the bases. What do you see? Look at the shaded part. Yes, I can only see one base at the bottom. I cannot see a base on top. I see a very pointed part. Do you remember what do I call this pointed part here, where the faces meet? Excellent, I call it a vertex. I cannot see a base on top. I just see one base here, which is at the bottom. So that's why I cannot say this is a prism. So this shape has one base. What about the faces? Are they rectangular like in the prism that I showed before? No, they are not rectangular. They look like a triangle. The faces are triangles and they meet at a point on top called the vertex. So for sure, this is not a prism. Do you have any idea what do I call this shape? Yes, I call it a pyramid. I call it a pyramid, and I bet that most of you saw pyramids before, whether in real life in some countries or in TV, or you must have some pyramids as models at your place, at your home. Now, I will call the pyramid the same way I call a prism. How? By looking at the base. Look at the base again. So my base is my reference in order to call any 3D shape. This is the base. Very good. It's a triangle. As I said, I will name it by the shape of its base. It's a triangle. So what do I call now the solid figure? Can you guess now? It has two words. I will start with the base shape, and the second name is the 3D figure. Excellent students, triangular pyramid. Triangular pyramid. This is the name of this 3D figure. Now let's go to page 656 and continue with pyramids. I want you to look closely at these shapes, and I want you to focus on the tips at the top. Can you see what's common in these shapes? Yes, they are meeting, the faces do meet at a pointed tip called the vertex. That's why these shapes are pyramids, right? By the way, we have discussed this shape right now in the previous slide. Now I will look at the second and the third figures, and I will name them the same way I did here. Remember, students, this pyramid, how do I know that these shapes are pyramids? They have only one base. Do you see any base on top? No, I do not see any base on top like in prisms. I only see one base at the bottom, and the faces are triangular faces. Do you see the faces? They look like triangles, and they meet at the top in a point called the vertex. So how do I name these pyramids? I should look at the base shape. Let's try to do this one. Who can help me? Excellent. The shape is rectangle or square, doesn't matter. It could be rectangle or square because we're not sure about the sides. For me, I can see it's a square, but maybe for other students, they can see it's a rectangle. Anyway, both names are correct. Now, what's the name of the solid figure? Rectangular or square pyramid. Excellent. Now, what about the last pyramid? Who can help me? I'm gonna give you a hint. Count the sides of the base. So now you will know the polygon shape. And then you can tell the name of the pyramid. Very good. It's a pentagon. And this is a pentagonal pyramid. So far, so good. Now, what's the difference between these two 3D shapes? Can you tell, students? They are not the same. Who can say? Excellent. The first one is a prism and the second one is a pyramid. How do I know? Because the first shape has two bases. Did you see the two bases? They are congruent bases. But the second shape has only one base, and the faces meet at the top in a point called vertex. Now there's a new vocab word that you will learn in this lesson. Prisms and pyramids are called polyhedrons. Let's say this again. Polyhedrons. It's a classification in 3D shapes. They are called polyhedrons. Why? Because I want you to see the faces very clearly. The faces are straight. They are triangles or rectangles. There are no curves here. Do you see any curves in these two shapes? No, they are straight shapes, straight faces, no curves. That's why they are polyhedrons. So remember, prisms and pyramids are polyhedrons. Polyhedrons means I cannot see any curves in these 3D shapes. Now, can you figure out which picture is a prism and which one is a pyramid? And I bet that most of you have a real prism, or saw a real one at least, or tried it, or saw a real pyramid in real life, as I said. Excellent. The first picture is a prism. And if you have a real prism, you can put it in the direction of a straight light, and then the light will scatter and you will get a rainbow. So I guess this is an interesting thing that you can try at home. And what about the second picture? It's a pyramid. And do you know where do we have pyramids? Yes, it's in Egypt, okay, in Giza. So pyramids are in Egypt. So these are polyhedrons. Do you see the faces? no curves, no curves, straight faces. That's why they are polyhedrons. Now have a look at these shapes: cylinder, cone, and sphere. I think we know all these 3D shapes. They are three-dimensional figures. They have bases, but there is something different about them. Can you see what's different about them? Very good, they have curves. They have curves. Right, they have curved surfaces. So they are not polyhedrons. They are non-polyhedrons. They are non-polyhedrons because they have curved surfaces. So, can you tell which one are polyhedrons and which one are non-polyhedrons? Yes, prisms and pyramids are polyhedrons. Cylinder, cones, and spheres are non-polyhedrons. So, and you can see all these shapes in page 656. Remember, a sphere is a three-dimensional figure. It has no base and one curved surface. And this is a cylinder. How many bases? Two congruent bases, and it's circular, by the way. But it's non-polyhedron because it has a curve, right? Same thing for the cone. So far so good. Let's now start share and show, page 656. And let's classify these figures. Let's write prism, pyramid, cone, cylinder, or sphere. Start with question number 1. Can you help me? Is this a prism or a pyramid? I know that it's not a cone, not a cylinder, not a sphere, but I have a confusion. Is it a prism or a pyramid? Remember the rule. A prism must have two congruent bases, and I can't find them. Do you see this base and the other opposite face? They are opposing each other and they are congruent bases, right? So that's a prism. Very good. Second one, it's a sphere. Perfect. Now, can you help me in number 3? Is that a prism or a pyramid? Look at the vertex on top. Excellent. It's a pyramid. Now for questions 4, 5, and 6, we have to mention exactly the solid figure by saying the shape of the base and the 3D figure. Can you help me in question number 4? Look at the base, count the sides, and tell me what figure is this. Well done, pentagonal prism. Pentagonal prism. I can see two bases, one on top, one at the bottom, and they are congruent. What about number 5? Yes, it's a pyramid because I can see the vertex on top. What kind of pyramid? Look at the base, count the sides, and then you will know the shape. It's a pentagonal pyramid. Very good. Number 6 is very easy, and I bet that no one will do a mistake in number 6. It's a cylinder. Finally, we are done with our math lessons for this semester and for this year. Congratulations, students, for all your efforts. You have learned a lot, you've practiced a lot, and I'm sure now you are ready to start your good math skills for grade 6. I want you please to practice, because the more you practice, the better math skills you get. You are encouraged, students, to solve on your own page 657, question 7 to question 15, practice and homework page 659, question 2 to question 9. Please picture the answers and send me to Class Dojo. This is the on your own page, and this is the practice and homework. I will post the answer keys tomorrow, May 5. Please stay safe, healthy, and calm. Good luck, students. I miss you. I love you. Bye-bye.